This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. This is your weekend wrap up of the Daily Drops and all things Jeffrey Epstein. My name is Lee Honish. I am the producer of Perfect Blue Studios, and I am joined by the mastermind himself, Bobby Capucci. How are you today, Bobby?
Lee, what's going on? Everything's great. Thank you.
Great, great. Let's get started. Tell me about the Daily Drop. Tell me about what you were working on this week.
Yeah, so we have a new feature on the show, as most people are aware of now, people that have been with us from the beginning or have joined us in the last few weeks or whatever. We have a new daily drop where, I drop a bit of news about the Epstein case, a bit of a nice, sorted, salacious piece of news each day if there, obviously if there's something to cover. But what I hope to do is kind of follow the story in real time in podcast form, almost like a long version audiobook.
That makes complete sense. And what did you unearth this week? What was the prevailing news stories?
This has been a pretty slow week, honestly, for this case. Like we talked about previously, Ukraine and the situation with Donald Trump has pretty much taken over the news waves and the whole entire news business at this point. Everybody's trying to get in on that because obviously that's the story that has legs, they think. But all you have to do is take a look at our numbers and you would see that this story has legs as well. And it leads me to believe, like I talked about in one of the daily drops yesterday, that it's obvious that the media is not covering this story for a reason.
Well, I thought they would take this opportunity to drop some stories. I mean, one story did hit, and that'll be our featured story for today. But by and large, the click cycle is definitely excited about the possibilities of Trump, the negative campaign, and the possibilities of being able to impeach him. That is occupying all the real-time news.
Right. And that's the case because when Acosta was involved in this case in the very beginning, when he was still the labor secretary, they couldn't get enough Epstein news out there. And now that Acosta's gone and the Trump administration cut that off at the knees and made sure that dog didn't hunt, they pivoted away from it because they've realized that there's a lot of damaging things in there to their friends.
Yeah, most assuredly. So with all that said, let's try to focus on the news of the week. The biggest news of the week is, of course, about Len Wexner. That'll be today's topic.
Yep, Les Wexner. Yep.
Epstein accuser holds Victoria's Secret's billionaire responsible as he keeps his distance. This seems to be the story. This is from the Washington Post. New Albania, Ohio. The first time the artist Maria Farmer says she heard the name fashion billionaire Leslie Wexner, she recalled, was when her employer, financier Jeffrey Epstein told her, "Les loves me. He'll let me do anything." Farmer, then 26, had been invited to create two large-scale paintings for the upcoming film As Good as It Gets, starring Jack Nicholson. Epstein offered Farmer an unexpected location to do the work in the summer of '96. An expansive country home in the New Albania, Ohio, located amid 336 acres of land owned by Wexner and guarded in part by sheriff's deputy employed by the longtime chief executive of Victoria's Secrets and the Limited. It was there, Farmer said in an affidavit she submitted as part of an Epstein-related lawsuit, that she was molested by Epstein and his associate, how do you say her name?
Ghislaine
Maxwell. In the series of interviews with the Washington Post, Farmer 50 spoke publicly for the first time about Wexner and his wife, Abigail. She never met Leslie, and says she spoke to Abigail only by phone while at the New Albania home. But she says she holds him responsible for what happened to me because the alleged assault happened at the hands of one of the closest advisors on property. Farmer says was motivated by Abigail and Wexner's security team. She said she was held against her will at the property by Wexner's sheriff staff after her alleged assault until her father came to pick her up. Farmer's mother, father, and sister and friends are separate. In the interview, that they heard similar accounts in '96 from her. All right, I'll pause right there. Why now? What specifically happened this week that made this appear? And I want to say this for the record: she was not underage in '96. For any of you paying attention, right? At the time of this, she was not underage. Correct? She was
Correct.
20.
No.
She's
Yep.
the same age as me, so she was 26 at the time. So she full well went into a situation that was seemingly out of her control. And again, I'm not shaming the accuser for the sake of shaming the accuser. I'm playing devil's advocate. This is a 26-year-old who's going to 336 acres that's being basically patrolled by its own private militia. Again, that's not a conspiracy if you're having off-duty sheriffs patrol your property.
No, it's a cover-up is what it is.
Right. Okay, so why now is this story starting to pop up in the Post? I suspect something occurred that caused this to happen, but I think the timing of kind of bearing it amidst the Trump rhetoric is interesting to me.
Yeah, this story, if you remember, like a few weeks back, Lee, maybe a month back, on one of the podcasts, we discussed this whole entire story. She was a New York Academy of Art student when she met Epstein at one of her art openings in '95, and according to the affidavit, that's when they met. And Epstein said that if I sold him one of my paintings for half price, he would help me with my career. Farmer wrote. She agreed and sold him a work for $6,000. So the year after Farmer first met Epstein, he called her, and she wanted someone, and he wanted someone to help him with acquiring art. So she was like, all right, cool, I'll take the job. Her job was buying art, monitoring. She says she saw numerous young girls in and out of his house at the time, including and Alan Dershowitz was there as well, by the way, according to her. So that summer, Epstein had arranged for Farmer to work on an art project at the Ohio mansion of Leslie Wexner. So at one point, Epstein and Maxwell came for a visit and sexually assaulted Farmer, she says in the affidavit. And this is an article, by the way, from artnet.com. So we'll drop a link in the description for you guys. Anyway,
okay.
So go ahead, Lee. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I'm starting to change my opinion of this girl. Okay. Just based on what you're telling me, I haven't read further in the article. And again, I'm not victim shaming, so everybody calm down. I keep saying that a lot. It's interesting how everybody thinks I play these things. Is she doing the I don't know in a totally different way?
No. She was definitely one of the people that was assaulted by these two, according to her affidavit and her story. She has never even came out, and she wasn't like looking for money or anything like that. But she knew how powerful Epstein was, especially in her world, the art world. We've seen it time and time again, Lee. How many projects has he funded in the art world? How many projects did he fund in academia? He had a very long-reaching grip, especially for artists, aspiring models, and obviously people that are into art. We all saw the sort of art that was at his mansion. He was obviously had an eye for it.
Wexner has said to be unaware of Epstein's alleged crimes, cut ties with him as soon as he found out about them. A Wexner family statement said neither the 82-year-old Leslie nor Abigail, who Farmer was before she made her allegation, Wexner declined to be interviewed. Mr. and Mrs. Wexner have condemned Jeffrey Epstein's abhorrent behavior in the strongest possible terms and severed ties with him in 2007. Thomas Davis, a spokesman for the Wexners, wrote in a statement, "We don't know what the Epsteins told Ms. Farmer about the Wexners, and while we don't know whom Ms. Farmer may have spoken, who may have claimed to be Wexner, Mrs. Wexner, it was not Mrs. Wexner. Before the recent news coverage of Ms. Farmer and Mr. and Mrs. Wexner had no knowledge of her, never have met her, never spoken to her, and never spoke with Epstein or anyone else for that matter. Maxwell could not be located for comment. Her lawyer did not respond to a request or comment." All right, I'll pause right there. I want to make this really clear. This isn't an old story I'm dredging up in the news cycle. This is a recent story as of today, October 5th at 10:14 a.m. So I'm trying to get a grasp on why now. There's a couple things going on here, right? Did she know? Is, again, playing the conspiracy devil's advocate here. right? Did she know?
Right.
Is this her cover up? Why now? And fuck Leslie and Abigail Wexner. In any case, like, no doubt in my mind about Les and Abigail Wexner. They can go fuck themselves sideways. They knew everything. They're dirtbags with money, and nobody can convince me otherwise based on doing 2 podcasts on this one particular topic. But I want to really cover 2 that just seem to be glaring. Why now for the Washington Post to be doing a story that is literally months old?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wonder the same thing when I saw this pop into the news feed today and I was reading about it. I was kind of laughing to myself considering we had covered it so long ago. So I was wondering that it's definitely a good question to ask. Why would the Washington Post be interested in it right now? Maybe they have something bigger brewing, Lee. Maybe they've decided to actually do some journalism over there at the Washington Post, and they decided that, you know what, we're gonna do what we should be doing this whole entire time, and we should be breaking stories on the cases that people care about.
That's
So
2 months old.
well, but like I said,
or are they covering their ass, right? A story that they should have been covering up to this point.
that could be it
I'm
too.
starting to sound like you. I'm starting to sound like you. This was my
Yeah,
greatest fear of doing this show. I'm starting to sound like you.
but the
But
thing
right.
about that is Lee, the thing is the media has been so devious for so long and nobody has been paying attention. Now all you got to do is pay a little bit of attention and you see exactly what they're up to.
I agree. And I agree that I'm watching these particular news feed cycles more than I care to. I'm opening my Yahoo stories more than I care to. I'm watching my daily pop-ups more than I care to, because I have to do this show once a week, right? So
Yeah.
it's on me to at least put a little bit of effort in and read what other people are writing about and watch the spin one way or the other. What just astounds me about this article is, I know for a fact we covered this months ago, or at the
Oh yeah.
beginning. It was like our second or third story, right? So maybe a month and a half. It's definitely 6 weeks behind in the cycle feed, right?
Yep.
Are
And
we covering our ass to give this coverage? Is this a story that's been sitting around? Is this something salacious that we know we can get clickbait on? Or, oh no, we really cover the news. Democracy doesn't die in the darkness. We're really telling the story. Yeah, but you're telling it after the fact. Like, it's great to tell a story after the fact, and it's important to do that. But when she first became public with the story, when these news cycles were out, and it was quote unquote conspiratorial websites that were making the news coverage happen for this particular story, right? It was laughed upon and frowned upon. And now that it hasn't gone away, here it is, Washington Post, big front bold, made their clickbait cycle. It's right on the front. Oh, Leslie Wexner is such a dirtbag. And I'm not saying that they were even the first. There were many people that on today's cycle, this was the story that they all jumped on for whatever particular reason. Today was the day.
yeah, no, like I said, I don't have any inside information onto what motivates the Post to run stories, and if I did, I'd probably be a billionaire, because boy, would that be nice to understand what those people were up to over there. But the fact of the matter is this: what it proves again is that we're ahead of the curve on this show. We are ahead of the curve of the mainstream media by leaps and bounds. We're talking 6 weeks ahead of the mainstream media. That might as well be a century in news time.
Yeah, definitely is. She says she was discouraged by Wexner's security staff for going outside without getting permission from Abigail Wexner, whom she said she spoke to by phones multiple times that summer. As you remember, just 3 paragraphs ago, they've never talked on the phone.
Exactly.
Farmer was a runner, but had to jog inside Epstein's 10,600 square foot house, where I stayed that summer in the house and working in the garage. All of it was within view of the Wexner house, Farmer said in the interview. The house, although owned by Epstein, like, this is a full piece. Like, this is an insanely large, detailed Washington Post piece. I'm not even at the halfway mark on this recanting of this story. What bothers me is this. What I'm really stuck on, did she know? Did she know what was going on and now she's picking on a dead guy, right? Look, I'm not saying that we can't all pile on Jeffrey Epstein. He is a scumbag after all. But if she was in on the take with Wexner and everybody else, isn't this a great cover story? And I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theory nut. I'm just saying, why now? Somebody had to make this story happen. Somebody had to get her in the position of being a victim. And again, I'm not victim shaming. I'm just playing a devil's advocate to this story, right?
Yeah, the one thing that I take away from this story that definitely seals it for me that she was just a victim of these sick people was that same summer, Epstein allegedly flew Farmer's younger sister to go visit him at the ranch, where he directed her to take off all of her clothes and get on a massage table, whereupon he and Maxwell molested her, according to the affidavit. It was not until later in the summer that I learned what had happened to her, Farmer wrote. And this is just an art student, a 26-year-old art student here. You know what I mean? We're not talking about an agent like Ghislaine Maxwell is. We're talking about just a kid who was trying to sell some art. And once again, she wasn't underage, but still taken advantage of here.
26 is awfully advanced for her to be this naive.
I don't know if she was being naive, honestly. That in that world, you would never think that somebody that your curator at your school introduced you to would do something like this to you, especially when he has this sort of money and this sort of profile. You would never think somebody would be so brazen.
I don't know. The way they break this story down, and I'll be honest, the way the Washington Post is breaking this story down bit by bit, borderline, this story is victim shaming. Like, they're painting her like, how did she not know what was about to happen to her?
Yeah, well, that's the Washington Post for you. Like I said, I don't, I have my own opinions about that publication, and we all know it's not very thoughtful or friendly, and there's a reason why. Because they have an agenda-driven way of delivering the media that is very forceful and in your face, and they've lost all credibility, Lee, with the whole Russia hoax. For how long do I have to hear about the Russia hoax? You want to talk about a conspiracy theory? That's a conspiracy theory. What we're dealing with here, folks, we're dealing with a cover-up. And our goal with this show is we're going to make the media great again. How about that?
Back to the good mid spot to push the new logo that doesn't exist yet. Make media great again. Nobody listened to reports. Shortly after she left the New Albanian property, Farmer learned from her younger sister that she had been touched inappropriately by Epstein and Maxwell earlier that year, according to the affidavit. Annie Farmer had visited Epstein's New Mexico property in April of '96 in an interview with the Post. And again, how long have they been sitting on this shit? In an interview with the Post, Annie described having to give Epstein a foot massage at Maxwell's direction. Again, we covered this 6 weeks ago. Also receiving, while topless, a massage from Maxwell with the sense that Epstein may have been watching. Okay, that's conjecture. That final quote is conjecture, right?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Annie said she didn't tell anybody about it at the time because she thought Epstein as Maria's boss and didn't want to disrupt her employment. When she returned to New York from Ohio, Maria Farmer says she filed a police report about her alleged assault, the contents of which were reviewed later and reported on by the New York Times. How long after did this actually appear in the New York Times? Let me look, because there is a link.
Well,
they wrote their article July 25th.
All the way back
in 96.
Lee, all the way back in 2003, when Vicky Ward ran the Epstein article, the Epstein piece in the Vanity Fair, she had known about this. She had heard about these allegations, and she brought them to the magazine's editor, Graydon Carter, and he cut the section from her piece.
She said the officers at the precinct encouraged her to speak to the FBI, which she says she did. No one appeared to act on her reports, she said, until the FBI knocked on her door in 2006.
Shocking.
10 years after the fact. So She filed this in real time in 96 and doesn't get action until 2006.
Right. And why? How is that the case? How is that the case? How is he so powerful because he has a couple of bucks that he's able to do that? Protect himself that way. There's no way he was being protected by somebody somewhere, and we all know that who I think it is. So go ahead. I'm sorry. Go on.
No, that's okay. The FBI, of course, declined to comment. She alleged in her affidavit to the Post that Maxwell and Epstein warned her after she returned to New York to keep quiet about the incident, and that those threats were key to her eventual departure from the city. She says she has no plans to sue Wexner. Do you want to take a bet on that one? You're a bookie on the side. You want
You know
to
what?
place wagers?
I don't think that she would be able to, because it's all hearsay, right? Unless she has physical hard evidence, I don't think it would be a case she'd be able to win. She's probably sought legal advice already for this since it's been so long, but I really don't know. I think she'd have a better chance suing Epstein's estate, even though it's going to take forever to get that money. I think she has a better chance of getting a little bit of something if she does that.
Farmer's allegations were publicly revealed as part of a lawsuit filed by another alleged Epstein victim. Farmer submitted her affidavit in April in support of a defamation suit against Virginia. Oh, a new name.
Virginia Joffrey. Joffrey. She's the one we've been talking about, the one with Prince Andrew. The one, I never mentioned their names. I don't really like to do that, but since it's out there now, obviously that everyone who's following the case knew who I was talking about. But since her name is out there so prevalently now, and she did the Dateline interview, I think it's safe for us to use her name.
Okay. The suit by Virginia Joffrey against Harvard University professor Alan Dershowitz.
Yep.
The Alan Dershowitz?
Oh yeah, Lee. Alan Dershowitz is in this affidavit, and supposedly he was given Joffrey when she was underage, and he had sex with her multiple times, him and Prince Andrew.
All right. I guess we can take a time out before we get to the final 4 hours of this article. Typical Washington Post article. Let's do a backtrack for those that don't know Jeffrey. Tell me first about Jeffrey.
Well, she's the one that's been the most vocal about all of this and the most forefront in the media. She was the one that she was cultivated while she was working at Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump's place. She was a towel girl, and Epstein was a huge. He used to visit there all the time. He was, obviously billionaire going to a country club, pretty normal activity. Anyway, supposedly that's where he groomed her from there, and then he got her involved with him and brought her into his atmosphere. And then once he had her, locked in the way he wanted her, groomed correctly, him and Ghislaine Maxwell, they set her loose to gather the information from Prince Andrew and people like Alan Dershowitz. And she says that in the affidavit. One of the things that Epstein was the things that he thought was most important for her to do was to get information from these men while she was having sexual encounters with them. And this is all in a sworn affidavit. This isn't just her running her mouth.
Okay. Which takes us to Alan Dershowitz, who served as Epstein's lawyer. Tell me about Alan Dershowitz's connections, ties, and creepy shit.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, there's a lot of allegation that Alan Dershowitz was involved in all of this. Obviously, he was Epstein's lawyer, and he was the one who worked out that sweetheart deal. He was the one that made it so not only the 4 main co-conspirators couldn't be tried again, but that anybody in the case that was involved with them couldn't be tried along with Epstein ever again after they took this deal. And he is the one who created it, obviously. We all know Dershowitz is one of the most powerful lawyers in the country, one of the most high-profile lawyers in the country. So he was the one who brokered this deal with Acosta and with the federal government. And it kind of makes me chuckle to think that he would broker a deal. It's kind of convenient that gives everyone involved protection, huh? After he's been accused of this. And now on Dershowitz's side, he's said that he's guilty, he's innocent of all charges, and he's countersuing, saying that he's innocent of all charges and that he can prove it, blah 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 blah. But the wheels haven't been spinning so far. We don't really know what's going on there. Obviously, we're not privy to the inner movements of the court.
Jeffrey filed that initial lawsuit that you just spoke of in 2015, implicating Dershowitz in a sex ring operated by Epstein. So kudos to the Post for how long after I don't want to be a dick about this, but they're writing their big piece.
I want to be a dick about it.
Okay, how long after the fact?
I mean, right.
Based on my math, 4 years.
And why?
Why today?
What's
Why today?
exactly right? What's their motivation? And that's the point that we're at, Lee. And this is what I keep driving home. The point I keep trying to drive home on this show. The media is not our friend. They're not the fourth estate. It isn't Walter Cronkite with his nice warm voice coming out and soothing you anymore. These are news readers. These aren't journalists. These are news readers, and they're given a script to read. They're nothing but actors, and they don't have our best interests in mind. They could care less if they're divisive. They could care less about these victims. All they care about is getting the egg off of their face from 2016 with their silly polls and their predictions.
Dershowitz has denied all the allegations as accused by Jeffrey of perjury. Dershowitz alleged that Jeffrey's allegations against him were made as part of an effort by Jeffrey to secure a payment or settlement from Wexner. Has there been any talk whatsoever about Jeffrey just doing this for money? Like, is that the scuttlebutt from the other direction to offset this? Or is there a suit in place?
Of course, Lee. What's the first thing you do as an attorney? You look to discredit the witness.
Sure.
Oh, she's a drug addict, or she's this, or she's that, or they're this, or they're that. That's the way they do things. And she has a high-profile attorney too, David Boies.
That's correct. Right into the next paragraph. Good job. Like you're reading it along with me. David Boies. Yep. Joffrey's lawyer said in an interview that no one involved with Joffrey's case has attempted to extort money from Wexner, nor was any payment ever made, but both Jeffrey and Farmer are represented by Boies. All right. Yep. Again, is this the Washington Post's effort to discredit Joffrey and Farmer, which was the way they're painting this story, right? Are they close to a settlement? Like, is there a court case on Monday? And again, it's going to sound hugely conspiratorial at this moment. Is this the Washington Post helping out the Wexner side camp of putting a damper on this story? Because they're clearly painting this that these girls are concocting a story.
The only thing that would make me slam on my brakes in that regard is Dershowitz has been an ardent supporter and defender of President Trump through the whole Russia investigation. So that's drawn the ire of the left. So I don't know if they'd be running interference for Dershowitz at this point.
All right. So conspiratorially speaking, I guess that's not the correct word. I mean, I use that word and I heard that you don't agree with my conspiratorial aspects on your first episode, and which I'm glad. If we agreed, this would be a really shitty show.
Exactly right.
Somebody's got to be me.
Right. And look, I don't ever want this to be an echo chamber. I always assume that whoever I'm talking to knows something that I don't, like Jordan Peterson says. So every time you and I talk, I always learn something new as well.
Right. So I'm looking like this, like I would with any client, right? I got a client today that wants to do life coaching. Lee, how do I get more people? And the first thing I thought of, how do I scare people into life coaching? Which is the shittiest thought that I've had in quite some time. But of course, my mind is like literally racing with, well, you have to bring up their fears of not being able to complete daily tasks and that they need someone to coach them. That's my job, right? So I'm looking at this. I look at every story from that perspective. What are they trying to scare me into, right? What are they steering me into? What is the action that they want me to take by again, everything. I say this to all of you, hip yourself up to one thing. Everything is just content. It doesn't matter what the content is. It's just content trying to get you to take action, right? That's always been my perspective on this show. What is the action that they want? The action I get reading it out loud to you, one, helps with my dyslexia, makes me feel better that I'm reading out loud, good words. Also tells me that the Washington Post proofreads. That's just a little humor I'm adding. Because I read a lot of boxing articles, Bobby. And trust me when I say this, those blogging fucks don't ever read their shit.
Yeah, the fighting journalism in general is pretty lacking. Yeah.
When you read them out loud, when you actually read bad writers out loud, it is comical. Kudos to the Washington Post. It's written well. So tell me if it's crazy, the story that I'm painting. Suddenly, out of the blue, during a cycle where I'm trying to impeach Trump, right? A story that is now backhandedly targeting Dershowitz, or putting a light on Dershowitz being a dirtbag for defending Wexner and Epstein, right, has suddenly
Yeah.
hit the news cycle. Also painting and on the verge, I would say this, on the verge of victim shaming two women involved in this case, right? They're playing both. To me, this story feels, I'm going to say it, nobody's going to believe me, this is a fairly neutral piece. They're playing both sides of the fence in this story. So I can make an argument either way based on the way they're portraying it. Could the girls be telling a story to get paid? Or are we telling the story of Dershowitz, who's just a complete shitbag for defending these two monsters? Now,
Right.
again, devil's advocate, is this story now a backhanded let's shit on Dershowitz so that if he is involved with Trump, this is going to cycle within the cycle?
Look, the cynic in me says that that's the kind of thing that the Washington Post and the New York Times has been known to do for the last few years. Anything that has to do with Trump, it's seek and destroy. And we can go on and on and on about politics in this country, about who's right and who's wrong. But I believe there's enough blame to go around on both sides of the aisle. I believe that the politics was messed up before Trump got here. Trump is a symptom of the problems. He's not the one who caused these problems. So
Correct.
we all need to we need to sit back. We need to reevaluate. And people that are going crazy over this Ukraine thing, like I said on the other podcast, the Daily Drops, I implore you to step back a minute and take a breath and take a look at what's going on and understand that this confusion, this is all part of their plan.
And it's actually kind of my plan too, how I do shit. So I'm going to explain a little quick side note about content to all of you to kind of hip you up to the concept. So if I put a piece of content out, doesn't matter what it is, I'm trying to steer the intended lead, right? Everybody's a lead. You're a lead. I'm a lead. That's why we're on Facebook. That's why we're on Twitter. We're leads following down little chambers, right? So the breadcrumb trails that you leave along the way are what we call in my business back tagging, right? I do it very overtly when I post. You've seen how I post. I'll tag and retag and double tag multiple individuals.
Right.
They're doing that very casually within this article. They're dropping names as frequently as they can and basically backtagging to other stories. My question is, why today, Saturday, October 5th, 2019, is this story out? Why does it include a lawyer who may or may not be involved with the president when it comes to defending him in regards to impeachment? Why?
Well, it's the same strategy they're using with Rudy Giuliani. All of a sudden, America's mayor is a Russian asset, and they're out to destroy this guy. There was a whole article about how the guy was going to the Yankee game. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a huge Giuliani fan. I mean, he did some good things for New York, but I'm not a huge Giuliani guy, that's for sure. But if the guy's going to the Yankee game, I don't think that's scandalous. I mean, the guy wants to go catch a ball game, cut him some slack.
New name added to the list, Bill George, the former chief executive of Medtronic, who says he is a friend of Wexner, said he believes Wexner was hoodwinked by Epstein and that he's done nothing wrong. All right, let's get to the new name. What do we know of Bill George, the former chief executive of Medtronic?
He's a minor player. He's an advocate for the Wexners, obviously a mouthpiece for the Wexners. He's a Harvard Business School professor. He's like you said, the Medtronic CEO. He's a best-selling author, but he's kind of a smaller player in all of this. His name's only popped up a few times, and like I said, he's only acted as an advocate for the Wexners. So basically, like with the parameters I've been using, he's definitely part of the problem. He's one of the enablers.
Huh. Okay. Let us continue and see what else the Washington Post is backtagging now that we're looking at this through new eyes. I feel confident that Les had no idea of what the guy was doing in regards to young women, George said. So is the Washington Post defending Les Wexner?
That's probably what's going on. If I had to, and I am a betting man, so I won't say if I was a betting man.
Here's my point. Why does that quote need to be in here? Why does that name drop need to be in here? I mean, this feels an awful lot like we're defending Les Wexner in this piece.
That's what they're doing. It's obvious what they're doing. They're definitely going to defend Wexner because let's think about it for a minute. A guy that owns L Brands You don't think he has any, he's never had a conversation with the man who runs the Post, Mr. Bezos, and any of the other people over there? They want interviews with guys like this. This guy owns Victoria's Secret. You know, they want to. Here's the thing. These journalists, we got to remember, they're just people too. They get starstruck. They want to be involved in all of this. They forget that the number one rule of journalism is don't become the story.
Yet another analyst has begun questioning whether, I love that, a name source right here. Yet analysts have begun questioning Wexner, whether Wexner can survive at the helm of the company he created. Wexner's retail empire has fallen on hard times recently, with its stock losing more than 80% of its value in the past 4 years, dropping nearly $100 a share to under 19. Okay, so has the scandal and allegation actually hit the pocketbook of Les Wexner finally?
Yeah, I think it has, and and the bad press, as we all know, when you're in a situation like that with a company like that. I mean, it's Abercrombie and Fitch. How many kids do they have running in their ads? And now you're involved with a child sex predator. Victoria's Secret, we all know that they were using that to poach women. Okay, so that's 2 for 2. You're batting 1,000 there, Mr. Wexner. Never mind the stuff that he had to do with, down at from the airport down in Columbus with, the whole entire sordid Southern Air Transit that he had going on with Epstein. This guy is in it up to his neck. I mean, I'll throw the allegedly in there, the cursory allegedly, but let's be real here. Come on.
Well, we get more names. The Jeffrey Epstein thing should be a huge red flag, said Sucharita Kodali, a senior analyst for Forrester. It's an extremely disturbing situation that should raise the question of the CEO's judgment. All right, now they're back on the other side of the fence in this particular story. I'm hoping that you've got nothing on Sucharita Kodali.
I've never even heard of her, to be honest with you.
Thank God. Tammy Roberts, an L Brand spokeswoman, declined to comment beyond the July statement that she said, while Mr. Epstein served as Mr. Wexner's personal money manager for a period that ended nearly 12 years ago, we do not believe he has ever employed by nor served as an authorized representative of the company. Well, Tammy's doing good damage control at the bottom of this piece. However, she just pointed out that they did have a relationship. All right, let's tie this all up in a neat little bundle for the end of this. Why today? How are we backtagging Wexner, Dershowitz, Epstein? Are we in a backhanded way putting names and words into the cycle to somehow muddle Trump?
Well, like I said, if we're being cynical, we could say that the behavior that's been exhibited by the mainstream media and the gotcha articles and the attempt to go after people anywhere in Trump's atmosphere, they've shown a pattern of doing things just like this. But what I will say is I don't have any evidence saying that this case is that. So as we all know, I don't throw accusations if I don't have evidence, if I haven't sourced things. I haven't really had enough time to go through and study today and look at the news cycle and read the other news and try and put 2 and 2 together, considering I was watching the Yankee game. Kind of got in the way a little bit. But now that I'm going to be settling in for the rest of the night, I'll be able to take a look at that, and I'm going to try and compare things, and it'll be interesting to see what I come up with.
Okay. I'm just running a quick search of Washington Post, Trump, Dershowitz in the cycle. And again, I'll say it. When I type in Washington Post, these are the words I used. Washington Post, Trump, Dershowitz. First story is the story I just read. That's not very encouraging.
It's the algorithm that's their preferred algorithm. And once again, I want to be clear to everybody listening. I don't want you to think I'm being partisan with this. These are the trends that I follow as an investigative journalist. I follow the lead wherever it takes me. And if this lead took me to my best friend, and my best friend was involved in Epstein, with Epstein, he would get lit just the same way that I'm trying to light everybody else up. Because at the end of the day, this story is too important for me to mess around with. And that's why it makes me so mad and so aggravated to see the media messing around with it. And Dershowitz, if he was involved with what went on with Jeffrey, and I tend to believe her story, to be honest with you, Lee. I believe what she says. She is very credible, in my opinion, from all the stuff I've read on her, the different interviews I've listened to with her. She is a very credible source, and much more credible than a guy like Prince Andrew. And you know, I don't know much about Dershowitz besides, you know, what's on the top layer. I've never really scratched the surface on him. I know he's a big shot lawyer and all of that jazz, but I've never really checked into like his proclivities, if he's ever been involved in anything else like this, and that's another deep dive that I'm going to do. I'm going to profile him on one of these daily drops that we have, because the case with him and Jeffrey right now.
So if you Google Trump Dershowitz, gives you the Newsweek story that's about 2 hours old about Giuliani taking in the Yankee game with Alan Dershowitz, who is against impeaching Trump. I don't know why the title of the show has to be that. It could be Giuliani takes in baseball game with Alan Dershowitz.
Yeah, or how about just former mayor takes in baseball game?
Dershowitz's new book will counter the Me Too movement. Like, they're smearing. Like, look, I'm not a Dershowitz fan by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just reading the headlines. Newsweek, Giuliani takes in Yankees game with lawyer Alan Dershowitz, who is against impeaching Trump. New York Post, Alan Dershowitz's new book will counter the Me Too movement. Wow, what a dirtbag. The Inquisitor, Rudy Giuliani is reportedly going to Yankee game with Jeffrey Epstein defender Alan Dershowitz. The Daily Caller, Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz explains why there is no possible criminal conduct in the Trump-Ukraine deal. NBC News, Trump's Ukraine conduct may not be criminal, but it could be impeachable. Yahoo Finance, Alan Dershowitz says Trump impeachment inquiry will backfire on Democrats. So now I've got stories that are appearing to discredit Dershowitz, who clearly holds a whole high-profile position as being a formative voice about legal activities, right? Again, I'll say I'm not a Dershowitz fan, but his knowledge
he's one of the top.
Of the law is
he's one of the top of the top. Yeah,
right.
He's like, if we were equating it to like athletes, he'd be in the top 5 of the NBA as players.
If I were to tell you that just Dershowitz as a news cycle, right? He's taking in a baseball game with Giuliani and he's against impeaching Trump, right? That's a 2-hour-old story. The second one, Alan Dershowitz's new book counters the Me Too movement, right? I don't have to read the rest of the story if I'm a common person.
That's it. So you don't need to read it.
You're telling me that Alan Dershowitz is against Me Too as a movement.
And he's hanging out with Giuliani and he's defending Trump, and he obviously, did other bad things. And like I said, I believe, Jeffrey, that Dershowitz was involved. He's another one. Oh, I didn't know anything. But the thing about Dershowitz is this: he's such a bright legal mind. I find it hard to believe that he'll ever get caught up in this. I just find it hard to believe that he'll ever let his self end up in any sort of legal jeopardy, Lee.
Dershowitz to Newsmax TV, Trump hush money not illegal. Like, it seems like we're going way out of our way to paint Dershowitz in a negative light.
No, that's the plan. Like I said, if you look around, it's a concerted effort by the media, and I'm not going to say all the mainstream media, but the powers that be in the mainstream media and the big voices. You look at what they're doing, and it's all a concerted effort, and they're right in lockstep with the DNC.
Okay, which takes us back to where we started this whole thing. Do we give a kudo to the Washington Post for finally writing a story?
I'll give them half. I'll give them half.
Okay. Do we shit on them, right? For basically, are they a part of this media cycle to shit on Dershowitz in a backhanded way and to help bag tag all these stories?
Well, like I said, we know that the Washington Post has it out for Donald Trump. That's just obvious. All the articles are, every single one of them, skewered and biased. And the reason I say that is, look, constructive criticism and real criticism of the president is very important in this country. But when you have blown your load the way the Democrats have with this Russia thing, you have not only left yourself with no credibility, you've left your mouthpieces in the media with no credibility to challenge Donald Trump when he does step out of line. So what you have done is you have not only harmed the country with your divisiveness and your poor reporting, now you have harmed the country because who is going to hold this man accountable if he does get out of line?
Yeah, I completely agree. It was a good piece for today. I'm
Yeah, it's
very
a
happy
good,
with the work we did here.
very good show today. We're making, like I
Uh,
said, we're making media great again.
what can we look forward to this week for the Daily Drop?
The Daily Drop this week is going to be pretty much more of the same. I'm going to follow the stories. I'll pick one juicy, nice, salacious story each day, and that'll be our 15, 20 minutes. Sometimes it'll be 10. Like last night was only like 12 or 13 minutes because it was a pretty slow news cycle with Epstein. So that's what we'll be expecting with those Daily Drops. And sometimes they'll be longer. If we have more information, it might end up being a 40-minute or 50-minute long form. It just depends on what information is coming across my desk, and it depends on how quickly I can source this information and make sure I'm delivering you guys the correct information, the proper news, no fake news, no BS, nothing, no trick words, because at the end of the day, this story is way too important to play games with, in my opinion.
As always, go to jeffryshow.com if you're not getting any of your updates. We appreciate all of you for listening on iTunes. What I would please recommend to everybody is click on the ratings. You don't have to leave a comment. It would be great if you did. I don't mind if you have negative or positive reviews. Actually, we've debated for a Daily Drop, me jumping on just to talk about the reviews, because there are negative reviews.
And I want to address that real quick. The negative review was that we kind of got off course with the talking about the Ukraine situation, but like I talked about in the Daily Drop, it all ties in together. If you're playing a long game like I am, and to be clear, my expertise, so to say, is in geopolitics, especially the Near East. But when you look at the long game and you're playing a long game with this Jeffrey Epstein thing, and you look at the other case and you see the way the justice system is run, and you see the two-tier justice system going on in that case as well, where it's a political gotcha game at this point, and the Justice Department was weaponized. It's very scary to think that not only can they weaponize the Justice Department against the most powerful man in the world, a sitting president, no matter who that sitting president is. Let's be clear, all of these people involved, all of these deep state FBI, DOJ, Rod Rosensteins and Weissmans and all of these guys, none of them were elected to office, Lee. They were all hired. They're all bureaucrats. They attempted what they were attempting to do is for a different story. But let me tell you what, it's a dangerous precedent. And my problem is, it has nothing to do with Donald Trump. My problem is you can't walk all over the Constitution and shit on things when you're not in power, to try and consolidate your power and get power back. There's only one way to get power in America, and that's through a peaceful transfer of power at the ballot box. And anyone who disagrees with that is an enemy of America.
I agree with you. I agree with everything that has happened. I agree that they played both sides of the fence. I agreed that it looks to me like they're working very hard to discredit Dershowitz in this particular case. I don't even think they need to do that, Lee. If they just let the case play out, like I said, I believe Joffrey. I believe that Dershowitz, what she alleges, I tend to believe her allegations, to be honest with you. But at the same time, I'm not in an echo chamber. I'm not playing a gotcha game. I understand what the media is doing on the flip side of that, targeting him just to try and discredit Donald Trump a little bit more. Yeah, it seems clear to me, just being, again, the devil's advocate, like they are kind of going out of their way to do that. Like they're trying to back tag and create weird searches in the news cycle that seem to tie Trump to everything. As we pointed out a week ago, right? Tying Trump to Epstein didn't work the first a week ago, which was what I was trying to point out. So this week we're going in a completely new direction of, okay, let's get the people that are connected to Trump tied to Epstein in a strange way. And not only that, the people connected with Epstein are just the most heinous people on the planet. And again, I'm not defending Dershowitz, right? He's just a guy who's paid to do whatever he's paid to do. If I was hired by anybody, I would do whatever I'm paid to do without malice, as long as nobody's getting hurt in the cycle. I don't show any evidence that Dershowitz was aware of anything negatively revolving around, like he didn't know what they were up to. I'm trying to be very liberal about this.
According to him. See, like I said, I believe that he was caught up in the whole entire thing like the rest of them, and he's the kind of guy that, will wiggle his way out of this. But that doesn't mean that he's not in my scope as well, because I truly believe that the rich and powerful, and how strongly he defended Epstein and the deal he got Epstein, where it basically through proxy gave himself protection in this case. I think that there's a lot of stink there, and I think that there's a lot of real journalism that needs to be done in that regard. But what I don't think needs to be done, because it cuts yourself off at the feet, is to go after him and do it with a political slant, trying to discredit Donald Trump at the same time.
Yeah, no doubt. But I also agree by the same token that there are people involved with this case that probably didn't know, that are rich and powerful and didn't know. The people that are trying to claim it are the ones that are the ones that are clearly in the know are in the know. And
yep, exactly.
But there are good people that are related to this because they are just strictly rich, powerful people that were involved in this whole thing, right?
For sure. And that's I've said that before as well. I don't think that anybody who was just in the guy's outer rings of his atmosphere are involved in the actual trafficking and the molestation. It's the people that are close to him, people like Alan Dershowitz, that are questionable in my opinion.
He probably knew. He probably had disclosure. It would be my guess, but again, it seems like we're going really hard at Trump and now taking out Trump's supporters and discrediting them. That seems to be the timing of this particular piece.
Yeah, and what it does, and it's not, and see, what they try and do, people try and say is, oh, well, you're defending Trump. I'm not defending Trump. What I'm doing here is, what I'm trying to tell you is, it's a disservice to the rest of us if they do this, because then nobody will believe what they're saying. The people, see, we don't just need one half of the country to believe what's going on. We need to be a unified voice in situations like this and stand up and say, I don't care who you are, who is involved, you're going to be held accountable.
Again, the systemic problem, right? It isn't that it's just Epstein or the fact that Epstein was covered up or the people that were involved with Epstein or the things of that nature. It's the fact that from your perspective, it happens over and over. Yeah, it happens over and over.
It never stops. And it's just, it's a revolving door of BS is what it is.
Right. I agree. And it is only at the behest of the media of what they want to cover, when they want to cover it, and why they're covering it in the first place. Like, I can't fault the story. I think it paints an even portrayal for both sides. Could be right, could be wrong, right? Neither party wants to comment. Therefore, it's left to the reader's imagination of who's telling the truth and what is the truth.
And that's journalism. That's what they should do. These reporters should report the story and let us decide for ourselves what the truth is when they present us the facts.
It does, however, seem to me that they are trying to take a dump on Dershowitz and Wexner in the piece, which rightfully so they should, to some degree, right? They're defending, they're on the wrong side of this. Really, from a historical basis, again, the timing is unreal to me that this story is out and as detailed as it is for literally no apparent reason on a Saturday at 7 o'clock East Coast time. Like, there's no reason for this story to drop the day and way it did.
Exactly. I apologize. My dogs are going crazy. My girlfriend just got home.
No, that's okay. We're at the end of the show anyway. Daily Drop comes at you almost every single day of the week. It is a bonus to everything you get. Doesn't even have commercials on it. It's a wonderful little drop on. So keep downloading, keep listening. Keep emailing. A comment to Cameron Sheets, who is the only one currently writing any emails. So get out there and write emails to the Jeffrey. What have we called the Gmail account? Jeffery Epstein Show. Hold on. I'm going to do this while I have Jeffrey Epstein Show. Jeff Epstein Show at Gmail. There you go.
Hey, I'd like to also just add, like I really, like I said on the Daily Drops, I really appreciate all the support that you guys are showing. I mean, it's pretty incredible how quickly you guys are downloading the show and eating up the content. And I'm doing my best to keep up with the demand, and I'm firing off as much content as possible. But like I said, there's a limited amount of news in this case. So as it comes in, I'm going to send it out so you guys can eat it up, and hopefully at the end of all of this, we got ourselves some justice, because that's really, at the end of the day, let's not forget about what's really important here. Let's not lose sight of what's important, and that's that these women who have been abused and these girls get some justice.
Absolutely. Just go to Jeffrey Show. It's as simple to do. Right on the front page, there's a place where you can click and write questions. I'm sure if you guys compile enough of them, Bobby can do a show during the week on the Daily Drop. Again, the Daily Drops don't have commercials. There's no interruptions. The reason there's commercials on these shows is because we have lots of you listening. If you would just simply go and buy the T-shirt or support the show with a small monetary donation.
Speaking of that, Lee, I got some ideas. I'm gonna make the Making the Media Great Again. We're gonna do that hat. We're gonna make some shirts up. I got some plans this week.
There you go. We appreciate you, all of you supporting us, and we'll keep doing this. We'll keep looking at it from both sides. We'll keep producing the content you guys are clearly clamoring for. Bobby actually ran numbers this week to see. He's very excited. I am casually optimistic about the success of this show. I don't know if we're caught in the same news cycle along with everything else, but that's the cynic in me. But all of you keep coming back week in and week out for additional shows. And if you guys want to contribute to that show, go to jefferyshow.com. That's simple enough. And just click on a question. All right. If you're not totally engaged and want to get a T-shirt or support the show, great. There are other ways to support it. Click like, share.
Yes.
There's also on iTunes, when you guys put in any star rating you want, good, bad, or good or bad, or a comment, it helps the algorithm on iTunes keep the show forward and bringing new people to the show. If you're just listening because we infuriate you, that's fantastic. The show is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. You hate me, you don't like my politics, you like Bobby, you don't like Bobby, you like me. Great, fantastic. But what we do need you to do is engage with the content, and that helps the show get to more people in the long term. And we do appreciate all of you doing that. Just go to jefferyshow.com. All of the links are there to literally all of the platforms. And of course, the most comprehensive Jeffery Epstein newsfeed ever created is there, along with the catalog of all the shows, including the Daily Drops. We appreciate it. Anything you want to add for this week, Bob?
No, I just want to, we'll end with our new tagline here, Lee. We're going to make media great again, one episode at a time. And I hope that everybody that's on this journey with us sticks with us on this journey. Like I said in the Daily Drops, there's going to be other content too. I'm going to be working on some other things, and it'll be clearly titled. In case you're not interested in anything I have to yap about besides Epstein, that's totally fine. I will not be offended. But there's other things, other stories, and other life events that are important to me that I'm going to be talking about. So look forward to some of that in the future.